What's up, YouTube? Thank you for clicking on this video. If you haven't already, go ahead and give your boy a young like and subscribe to the channel. My name is Derry. This is The Weird Perspective. On this channel, I look to inspire, motivate, encourage, and challenge you to go after God like you never have before. I want to inspire you to seek out the truth of Jesus. I want to motivate you to go deeper in studying the Bible. I want to encourage you with the love of Christ. And I want to challenge you to recognize sin and repent. This is the off-season edition of the podcast when I interview people that I know and are close to. These people have amazing stories of how God has moved in them and through them. And today's guest is no different. The woman that will be joining me today holds no punches. She is a wife, she is a mother, she is a friend, and she is a boss, a real boss. And she loves Jesus. Welcome to the channel, my boss, Grips, Director of Operations, Sue Lee.
I do go by the name Sue Lee, yes.
Thank you for being on today and joining me in this interview. How you been doing? What you up to?
Good. Yeah, I've been great. I actually just, it's the weekend here, so I just spent some time with my family, my kids. I have an 11-year-old son and a 5-year-old daughter, so that's good. And then an awesome husband who I'll probably talk about in a bit, but yeah, things are good.
Cool. Man, you're such an interesting person, and just some of your takes and perspectives, things that I've heard you talk about. They're real interesting, but I love how you're always able to give an answer. You're always able to explain yourself. So, really quick before we dive into the reason why I have you on and sharing your story, why is Chicago the best city in the world, in your opinion?
Yeah, so I'm known to have said that to many people. Yeah, I mean, if you've been around me long enough, you will have heard me say that. So I've lived in Chicago since I was 5 years old, so quite some time. And I've also, though, visited many cities. So I used to be a consultant who traveled every week to different cities. And so I've had my share of visiting, living in, and seeing a lot of cities, probably all the major cities in the US, and then a whole bunch around the world, just because I enjoyed it traveling. And while there are so many awesome places around the world, I just always go back to Chicago is the best. And I'm not here necessarily to convince everybody, but I think some of the reasons why it's a great just mix of a lot of things. So I'm a big sports fan. I think Chicago has great sports teams. We're not always winning, but they're great to watch and great to support. I think the food here is amazing, and just the variety of different restaurants and foods that you can get. I love the diversity of people. So even, and then I live in Logan Square here in Chicago, and I just feel like there's a diverse group of people. And then just, yeah, around the city, not just ethnically and culturally, but socioeconomically, just a variety. So I really love it. I love the weather. I know a lot of people complain about the cold being winter right now. I love the different types of weather that we have, and I like it when it gets 30 below because I think it makes us tough here in Chicago. So I love so much about our city. So yeah, I think it is the greatest city in the world, and especially in the summer. I always tell people, come visit Chicago in the summer. You can't beat it. Just the activities and fun things to do. So yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, you're right. I think it does make us tougher. My sister, who's from here, moved to Florida. And then
Uh-huh.
she came back a few years later and was complaining. It was about 45 degrees. And she had
Yeah.
this massive coat on. And she was cold and was like, "Can you turn the heat up?" And I'm just like in a hoodie. And I'm like, "Man, you went to
Yeah.
Florida and became a weakling. You can't even take the cold anymore. Like, come
That's
on,
right.
man." So, yeah, definitely. I love all 4 seasons. Fall's my favorite season. And so
Me
I don't
too.
think I could move into a place where I don't experience fall weather.
Yeah.
I couldn't live there. And then the
Yeah.
snow, especially like snowfall on Christmas Day or Christmas Eve. Just it just sets the tone. So
Yeah.
summertime, and Christmas, it just this just don't mix. It just don't mix.
Yeah, it's
Um,
awesome.
that's cool. What is share with us your favorite part about Chicago? If you have one thing that you could be like, it's my favorite thing about Chicago, what would it be?
Oh gosh, I don't know that there's one favorite part. I mean, I think just what I said, all the just the mix of all those things. Although, I took my kids to the Shed Aquarium this weekend, and there's a specific place right between the Shed Aquarium and the Adler Planetarium, right by the lake, and the skyline is right behind. We took a picture, and I actually said to my kids, "This is one of my favorite places in the whole city. It's just really beautiful." But yeah, I don't know if there's one thing that I love about Chicago. I love all of it.
I love it. Cool.
Yeah,
Cool.
that was not an answer to your question, but
Nah, it's all good. So you were born in Korea and then you moved from Korea here to Chicago. Tell us about why and how was that like for you as a child?
yeah. Yep. So, like you said, born in Korea, came when I was 5 because my dad actually, who was a banker, he was a vice president of a bank, was asked to come to Chicago to set up a branch of his bank, and then once it got up and running, we would go back to Korea. And so it was supposed to be a temporary stay, but actually, having lived here for almost 3 years, my parents towards the end of that time realized that we had opportunities here, mostly, they were thinking about us, their kids, education wise and career wise, that there were more opportunities here for their daughters than in Korea. And so they decided they wanted to stay here. My father's bank actually said no to that, said you need to come back to Korea. So what they decided to do was my dad resigned and left his bank. And basically, my parents started all over.
Mhm.
My mom was a stay-at-home mom. My dad was the only one who worked, but when they left the bank, they basically started life over here, from the beginning, not knowing really, even language-wise, we weren't going to stay here permanently. So my parents didn't even really spend a whole lot of time trying to learn the language because they knew it was temporary. So they really started over from the beginning. So my parents ended up doing lots of different odd jobs to save money, and then they opened up a fast food restaurant, a small fast food restaurant in the suburbs. But yeah, so that's how we came. That's how we ended up staying. And yeah, life. I mean, I will say when I think about my childhood in Korea, in Chicago, as a young person, really great. I mean, I have really fond memories of just having lots of fun and spending a lot of time with my parents and my sister. So my sister Annie was, she's a year and a half younger than me, so she was 4 when we came from Korea to the States. And then my sister Janet, who's 9 years younger than me, was born here. But yeah, really great childhood. Grew up in the suburbs of Chicago in Palatine, and yeah, just have really good memories of growing up there.
What neighborhood did you said you were first in the city
Yeah,
before you
so
moved to
we
Palatine? What
yep.
neighborhood were you in?
It's we were in Edgewater. There's this
Okay.
really tall black building, like 55 stories. If you're into the Edgewater neighborhood, you know exactly what building I'm talking about. So we lived there for the first 3 years, and then afterwards we moved to Palatine,
Okay. And I mean, this might be an ignorant question to me. What part of Korea were you from? Was it like North Korea, South Korea,
South Korea.
South Korea?
Born in the biggest city in South Korea, Seoul, and
Okay.
yeah.
Cool, cool. What was the you might not remember this because you were young, but was it a long drawn out process for you guys to come over here and to become citizens? Or what, was your father supposed to just be here for a little bit and then it was just on like a work visa type situation? What was that like?
Yeah, it was quite actually a long process. In fact, my dad lived or came to Chicago by himself for and lived here 1 year before we all moved.
Oh,
And
okay.
then because it was supposed to be just 3 years temporary, we didn't really or we did not pursue any citizenship kinds of things until they did decide to stay. But yeah, it's a long process. I don't know, for anyone who's been through it, I know no process, everyone's process is not the same. Everyone's is quite different, but yeah, ours was pretty long. And I remember becoming a citizen in my early 20s and being so proud of that day and proud of the opportunity to vote and things like that. So I remember that clearly. But yeah, it was a pretty long process that I'm sure my parents did not share all the details with me about. But yeah, it was quite a long process to become a citizen.
Wow. Wow. I'm always just interested in those processes. I think America, like, I think the to become a citizen, the process is way too long. Like, I don't
Yeah,
understand. I
yeah,
know people that it took them 10 years, some of them even longer,
yeah,
to get citizenship. And it's like, hey, they've been here, they've been working, they're not on the
yeah,
run from their country to come here, they're not terrorists. Like,
yeah,
it shouldn't be. It takes so long. So I was
yeah.
just curious about that.
Yeah, and I would say this, I mean, I think those are good questions. I would say if you know people who are immigrants, ask questions, ask about their story. They're really interesting. And, I've shared and heard from other, friends who are immigrants and, came from a different country, whose parents came from a different country. And it's always really interesting to hear about. And yeah, so I would encourage, and just the mindset even of an immigrant. I mean, really, when my parents decided to leave the bank and leave that lifestyle and leave that life, leave the country permanently to stay here, I really realized, even at that time, I guess I was 8 years old. At 8 years old, really the sacrifice that was, right, for
Yeah,
my parents to give up a whole life and lifestyle to start all over. And so even as a young child, I remember kind of feeling the weight of that responsibility, even on myself, that like my parents sacrificed this for me, gave up a lot for me. I need to make it worth it, right? So like I need to be successful. I need to live the American dream. I need to become something so that they could say what we sacrificed was all worth it. So anyways, I think that's something that's similar across a lot of immigrant stories. So all that to say, I think people should ask and hear stories from other people who've experienced that.
yeah, for sure. Um, Last question on your childhood is how, like, culture, movies, TV shows, like, view Koreans with, like, the parents are really strict, the culture is like really strict, respect your elders. I even heard some things of like you can't look elders in the eye, you gotta look down.
Oh,
Is there any truth to any of that? And
oh
did you
man.
experience any of that?
If so, I think I've been doing it wrong because I think I look at them in the eye. Um, yeah, I mean, yeah, of course. I think there's some stereotypes or exaggerations, and then other things are true. I mean, I think respecting elders is very important. And I remember the first time I had heard my friends call their my friends' parents, who would say to me like, "Oh, call me Joan." I think this was like in high school, right? Like I'd say, "Oh, hello, Mrs. Smith," and she'd say, "Oh, call me Joan." And I think, I can't do that. Like you're a parent, you're a grown up.
Yeah,
Because
yeah,
in the Korean culture, you would never call somebody by their first name, right? Like there's certain terms, actually, like some generic terms that you call older women and older men. Um, and even among siblings, right? Like you don't, like my younger sisters don't call me Sue, they call me Unni, which is the Korean generic term for older sister. And so there are definitely respecting elders, bowing when you introduce yourself, lots of different things. And I'll admit, I mean, I don't know a lot, just because I think I have kind of um been very Americanized.
Americanized.
So yeah, so I don't know all of it, but yeah, there are definitely
Do
some
you
things.
still speak Korean?
Oh man, I speak Korean at like the second grade level. So there's a term among Koreans called Konglish, which is a mix of Korean and English, and so that's what a lot of us speak to our parents. And because they know us, they get it, but yeah, not enough to um
Not enough
yeah,
to teach your children.
no, in fact, I had all these dreams of when I have kids, we're gonna, speak Korean. I don't know how this was gonna happen because my husband, who's Korean, doesn't speak a word of Korean. But I said, my kids are gonna, we're gonna speak in Korean and they're gonna learn, be fluent and all of that. And that just went out the window and neither of them speak a lick of Korean. So yeah, my total parent fail, but yeah.
Cool, cool. So as a young adult, right, transitioning to like the high school years, college years, when did you like catch your stride? Like you felt like this is home, I'm comfortable in my skin, I'm comfortable around the people that I'm around, and these are the goals that I have and I'm going to pursue them. When did that happen for you?
Hmm. Well, okay, I will say this. I'm not sure where it came from, but I use this term a lot. I'll tell people that I have an unhealthy amount of self-esteem, which is funny, but that's kind of
You
the
are
way it's
very
been.
confident. You are very confident.
Yeah, and I don't know where it came from. I mean, I have sort of an idea, but I mean, my parents have, especially my father, was very encouraging and supportive, and you know, cheered me on, and so I'm sure that has a little bit to do with it, but yeah, I think just realizing the importance of not comparing myself was something that was instilled to other people, was instilled in me at a young age. So I think that helps a lot because when you compare yourself to other people, there's always going to be people who are smarter, better at something, pretty, whatever, name it. And so that's something that I've actually rarely done in life, which actually I think is what helps. But um my dad, when I was young, I remember he sat me down and he said, Sue, what are your short-term goals? From for the next like 3 months, 6 months, what are your short-term goals? And then what are your long-term goals, longer term? So like 5 years, 10 years. And I remember looking up at him and I said, I don't know, Dad, I'm only 7 years old. And but I remember that conversation so vividly. And so I think having a dad and parents like that who taught me about goal setting and trying to what's uh, having things to look forward to is something that I learned from a young age, and so I think that has helped, and that's something that I has carried and carried through my adult life.
Okay. Cool. So um you went to high school in Palatine, correct?
Palatine Pirates, yep.
Palatine Pirates. And then so you graduate, you went to college. What did you go to college for? What college did you go to and what did you study in college?
I went to the University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign, and I studied marketing. So I was a business major.
Okay. Okay. What was college like for you?
College was fun. Gosh, yeah, college was a lot of fun. I mean, sometimes I think back and wonder what my life how my life would have been different had I studied more. um, but grades were really important to me, K through 12, and I really kind of almost stressed myself out about grades and getting straight A's and all of that. And not that uh, grades and studying didn't become important in college, but I think just the the freedom that you get in college, the new friends that you meet, the opportunities to kind of make decisions on your own. It was just a really fun time. So I'm really grateful for my years at the U of I. And then I will say, I joined a Christian fellowship um, my freshman year, and that church fellowship really had big impacts on me in terms of, I learned I had people who discipled me. I learned a lot about what it meant to really follow Jesus, what it meant to um yeah, just live a life of striving to live a life of holiness and righteousness, and
Mm,
learned a lot of disciplines about the Christian life, and just had a lot of good examples. Now, no church is perfect, and so I'm not claiming that, but it was just a really profound time for me in my growth. I became a Christian when I was 14, but really my college years had some um, big impacts in just my growth spiritually. So yeah, really good memories of my time at U of I.
Nice, nice. So, yeah, you mentioned that you joined the Christian Fellowship. I was going to ask you to kind of share your testimony of when you became a Christian. Did for your family, you're new here in America. Was Christianity something that your family had learned about in Korea and brought it over here? Did you grow up in a Christian household? What was your upbringing as far as religion was for you as a
Yeah,
child?
yeah. So we didn't really believe or have a religion in Korea. And when we came to the States, my parents joined a church, a Christian church, mostly for social reasons because they wanted to meet other Koreans in the city of Chicago. But that led to all of us learning about who Jesus was, and then having each of us a personal relationship and having Jesus as our personal Lord and Savior. So, I mean, my parents and my sisters and I have talked about that many times about how by God's grace, he allowed us to come to America. And that's where we met and found him. And so we're really grateful for that. But yeah, so we started to go to church when, we first came. So I was like 5 or 6. And I think I was like, we went to church and I knew kind of all the right answers in Sunday school. So I was the one raised my hand, Jesus was usually the right answer. And
Was that
and
church here? Was that church in the city or was it out in Palatine?
yeah, it was in the city.
Okay.
Yeah. And then when we moved actually to a church in the suburbs, the pastor met with each like new member that came to visit that church. So he met with my parents and then he met with me and he just asked me about my relationship with Christ um I came to realize through this conversation that I really, even though I'd gone to church and I knew the answers, I really didn't know Jesus, and I hadn't um confessed my sins. I hadn't accepted him into my life as my Lord and Savior. I hadn't, made that um proclamation. And so he walked me through that, prayed with me. And so I was 14 at that time. And um yeah, and then I think back, and really high school, I probably had like dual lives where at school I was one way and then at church and youth group I was another way. And so I mean I can talk about my just kind of journey, my faith journey, and just different points in my life where God really revealed himself to me. But yeah, high school, like I said, 14 is when I came to accept Jesus as Lord and Savior. And then college, like I had shared a few minutes ago, is really where I grew a lot, and through discipleship and through just really good um, models and examples of people that were older than me.
What was that experience like for you? Like when you like, no, okay, I am gonna follow Jesus. Like Jesus became real to you. That moment where you went from being a religious person to actually being saved and walking with Jesus. What was that experience like?
Hard. I mean, dying to self, being transformation, right? Even that word, like that once you become a believer, your life is no longer the same. And so I think those things became reality, and living it out was reality. And often it's hard, right? Because there's your flesh that's fighting against the spirit that lives within you. And so it was challenging and hard, but really, like I just am so thankful because my college years is where I really spent time in scripture. My prayer life really grew, and just even seeing the power of prayer, praying and seeing God answer, praying and having to wait, growing in faith and growing in trust. All of that was um often challenging, but just so, I mean, I felt the growth, right? And knowing Jesus more and deeper. And so, yeah, just really, um, just such a huge impact, those years had on my walk and who I was as a believer.
Was it when that reality hit you of like sin and recognizing sin, was it at a church service? Oh, well, you were like at a concert. For me, it was a play. Like I had just moved back, or I was in the process of moving back from Ohio here to Chicago, and I was staying at my friend's house because I had a job interview here, and we went to church, and he was in this play. And this play was called Eternity, and me growing up in church and stuff like that. I never like denounced my faith, but I wasn't living for Jesus at that time.
Mm,
And so I went to church and I was like, yeah, I'll go to church. It's a play. I thought it was gonna be like a real cheesy, corny Christian play, but it was
mm,
actually very high production, really good. And everything that was going on, I had been doing in my life. Um, and these people were dying in their sin and going to hell. And that literally scared the hell out of me. Like just
mm,
watching that. And
mhm,
I was like, that's when it clicked, and it was like, I better get right with God now, because I don't know when my life is going to end, and I gotta stop
mm,
playing games, and I can't just be this person that like because I know scriptures or because I grew up in church and my mom made me learn things that I'm good. Like I need to live this out, work out
yeah,
my salvation with fear and trembling. So that's what it was for me. And it just clicked. And I started, obviously we still got trials and tribulations that we go through and mistakes that we make, but I took my walk with Jesus serious from that point
yeah.
on. Um, did you have an experience similar, or was it just like you started getting discipled and it just kind of went from there?
Yeah, I would say for me, I don't know that I had, I didn't have that kind of experience about sin. I will say I had this really profound moment when it came to the understanding of grace. And
Mm,
that was actually not in college, but a few years later in my mid 20s. I was in Thailand. I was on a mission trip to Thailand, and we were going door to door evangelizing. And so we're just knocking on doors in this big apartment complex and asking people if they would give a few minutes for us to share some good news with them. And so anyways, we were doing that. And the first door that we knocked on, so I had an interpreter with me. The first door that we knocked on, the lady comes out and we ask, would you be willing to spend a few minutes with us? We want to just share something. And people in Thailand are very, very friendly. And I'm not sure if this is correct, but I think like Thailand, like the slogan might be like the land of smiles or something like that. But anyways, they're very friendly. And so she, with the big smile, said, sure. And so I was just so happy that she said yes. And she came out into this like lawn area, and we sat down and I shared the gospel with her. and
mm,
and as I'm sharing and as the interpreter is speaking, she's nodding and smiling, and I'm sitting there thinking in my head, oh my gosh, I am going to lead this lady to know Jesus. And I just couldn't believe it, and I was so excited. And after I had shared the gospel, I said, do you want to receive Jesus into your heart as Lord and Savior? And with this huge smile, she looked at me and she said, no thank you.
that's the
And
worst. That's the worst
I
feeling.
remember, in that split second, like uh I was disappointed and a little surprised, but in that moment, the Holy Spirit spoke to me and said, that's grace. That's my grace for you, that you heard the same message
Mm,
some, 11, 12 years ago, and you accepted it. Made sense. You wanted that, you received that. And this lady, it didn't, and it's not that it's, nothing that I did, right? As Ephesians says, right? For it's by grace you have been saved, right? Through faith. And this not um, from yourselves. It is the gift of God, not by works, so that no one can boast, right? And so
mm,
that verse came alive to me. So it's nothing that you did, but it is purely by grace. And grace just kind of like, I mean, it was like my mind was blown.
mm,
And just the gift that grace is. And, you know, going back to what I said about when my parents decided to stay here and my dad quit his job at the bank, and I realized kind of the magnitude of that sacrifice and that I needed to make life, or that decision worth it. I had then kind of grown up really valuing works, right? Like work hard to get things done, work hard to accomplish things, work hard to get good grades and to get a job and all this. And so works was, it was a big deal to me, and to understand that grace had nothing to do with anything you did to earn, but it was purely something that God gave freely.
Hmm.
It was just, like I said, such a foreign concept, but so grateful. I was so grateful for it, and so just in awe of his grace for me. So I would say that was, probably one, if not the biggest kind of moment in my faith walk, about just who God is and just the reality of, yeah, his goodness for me.
Nice, nice. That's powerful. Yeah, grace is yeah, once you grab a hold of grace and you realize, man, there's nothing I can do. And God is giving, even with all the bad things that I've done, God is still
Hmm.
giving me this opportunity to have a relationship with him. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's an amazing feeling. It's an
Yeah.
amazing feeling. So you are married, and you have two amazing children. How did you meet your husband? This is an amazing story. I love this story, but I want you to share it with viewers.
Yeah. So my husband Ken and I have been married almost 20 years. So this June will be 20 years.
Shout
And
outs to the 20 years, 2 decades.
yeah, yep. Yeah, and we actually met on a blind date. I had actually been very open to blind dates and friends introducing me to people they knew. And so I had my share of blind dates. And actually, I guess when it comes to Ken, I kind of orchestrated this blind date because I had heard about Ken from a friend. She had just talked to me about, somebody she sort of knew, and she was saying a lot of great things about him, loves the Lord, seems like a really nice guy, and this and that. And at the end of like that 10-minute conversation, 10-15 minute conversation, she said, I think he might be dating somebody. And I was like, oh my gosh, you just wasted like, 10 minutes of my time. And I said, well, can you find out? And she said, okay. And then nothing ever happened. And then a few months later, another friend is talking about this mission trip that he had just gone on, and several churches had kind of come together and gone to Nicaragua together. And he was talking about this guy that he had met on this trip. And he, mentions his name is Ken Lee. And I said, oh, I've heard of him before. And so again, he's saying all these great things about him. And I said, do you know if he's dating somebody? And he said, oh, I don't know, like that didn't come up, on the trip, so I'm not sure. So I said, can you find out? And he's like, sure. And then nothing ever happened. So then a few months later, I'm leading a small group at the time, and we were talking about sharing our faith with our friends and family who don't know Christ. And one of the young ladies in my group was just kind of sharing that she really has a hard time um, sharing with people at work about her faith and even inviting them to church. And she said, although I should learn from this guy that I work with, he's so bold. He shares about, his faith. He invites people to church all the time. And then sometimes, like, as he's leaving the pharmacy, he'll put like Bible verses on the computer screens and things like that. And she's like, it's like sort of embarrassing, but then at the same time, I wish I could be more like that. And then after that story, she says, oh, some of you might know him. His name is Ken Lee, and he goes to such and such church. And in my head, I thought, because I couldn't say this out loud because I'm leading the small group, but in my head, I was like, what's with this guy? This guy, Ken Lee, keeps coming up, and everyone's saying these great things about him. And I've been
Mm.
trying to see if he's single, and if, and no one's doing anything. So I thought, all right, my sister's best friend actually goes to the same church as Ken. So let me see if I could meet him. So I asked my sister to ask her best friend to ask Ken, would you be interested in meeting somebody? Are you open to that? So
Way
my
to go
sister
after
Annie,
what you wanted.
yeah, but I was like, after 3 times, like, my gosh, somebody introduced me to this guy. So Annie asked Julie, who then asked Ken, would you be interested in meeting somebody? And he said yes. And so we went on a date. We met on a date. And I had been praying for my husband, about my husband, really faithfully for a good number of years. And the Lord really, you know, because marriage was on my heart. I wanted to get married, and I wanted to marry, you know, who God's best for me was. And so I had prayed, and through that time, you know, it's a long story, so I'll shorten it. But through that time, God really not only changed my heart for the qualities in a husband, um, how I was praying for a husband, who I was praying for, but he had essentially given me these specific qualities. And so on this blind date, it was so clear that this was the man I had been praying for all of these years. And so at the end of the date, as I had almost every, you know, as I said, I'd gone on a lot of these setups and blind dates. Um, the thing I would do afterwards was either call my sister or one of my close friends, and they would ask me how it went. We would kind of go through it and analyze. But this time, my sister said, "How'd it go?" And I said, he's my husband. I met my husband. I mean, with 100%, I mean, confidence. And I didn't know this until later, but Ken, who was living with a few roommates at the time, went home. His roommates asked him how'd it go, and he said, "She's my wife. I met my wife tonight."
Wow.
And so, in fact, actually, the next day, I was traveling for work, and so I wasn't in town. But he called me, and he basically said, "Yeah, I know that we're." I don't know remember exactly the words. It wasn't creepy or anything. He just said, "Yeah, I've been praying, and I know that, you know, you're the answer to my prayers." That and so he kind of confessed that. I mean, knowing him, gosh, if you knew Ken, that's so unlike him, because actually I was thinking as he was speaking, gosh, he's so confident. And I could at the end of this speech say, "Oh, I'm so sorry, like I don't feel the same way at all," or like, "Oh, that's creepy, like we just met yesterday." But I felt the exact same way. And so we got engaged a couple months after we met, and then we got married 6 months after we got engaged. So from the day we met to the day we got married, it was about 8 months, and like I said, 20 years in June.
Nice. Congratulations again, man. If anybody watching this video, if you ever met Ken, you know that he's funny. He's an amazing guy. Every time he walks in a room, she smiles. You don't always get that after 20 years of being married. Sometimes the spouse walks in the room and the person's like, "Oh, here they are." But not Sue. Like when Ken walks in, he brings her Panera bread. Isn't it Panera bread?
My drink, my yeah,
Her drink
my
from
strip
Panera
club
Bread. He
drink. Yeah.
walks in, he says hi, slides over, leans in, gives her a drink, and then he's smooth. So, but no,
Yeah.
he's real cool, man. It's been fun getting to meet him and talk to him
Yeah,
on
I actually just
different
said to I
occasions.
said to a friend recently that I'm surprised that after almost 20 years, when he walks into the room often, my heart kind of does this thing. And I didn't expect that actually after so many years, but I'm thankful. Yeah, he's great.
That's nice. That's cool. Um, so you have two children, Isaiah and
Gia.
why am I forgetting your daughter's name?
Yeah,
Please
Gia.
forgive me, Gia.
Uh-huh.
Um, how are they doing? And what is your mother? How's your mom experience been?
Oh man. Um, gosh. God is good, and his plan is perfect, his timing is perfect, but often not at all the way I planned it. And so, in fact, so when Ken and I met on that blind date, I asked him about children. Or do you like children? Do you want children? And or he had asked me, you know, then back, and I said, yeah, I mean, I want a lot of children, and I meant it. I told him on that blind date, have a picture in my mind of a house with like 20 children, and I wasn't kidding because
Whoa,
I,
20
yeah,
children.
and I explained it as this. I said, I want a lot of biological children, but I also have a heart for adoption, and I have a heart for fostering. And so I said, I would love to have, you know, 5, 6 biological children, adopt another, I don't know, you know, 5, 6, and then just have a house full of children that we're fostering and caring for. And so I, you know, I had asked him about that, and he said, actually, I think every guy that I went on a blind date with, when I asked them, had the same answers. They would always say, it's not something that I've thought about before. And, Ken, when he said that, he said, but I'd like to pray about it. Can I pray about it? And I said, sure. And then he said, is that a deal breaker? And I said, yeah, I mean, nothing against you, but if that's not something that you have like you're open to, I know that then you and I aren't compatible, because that's something that I know is in my future. And then, a few weeks later, he came back and he said, yeah, I had never really thought about it, prayed about it, but I am open to it. So, having a family and adopting and fostering was really something that we had talked about from the beginning. And and then we got married and tried to have a family and try to start to have kids, and it just did not go the way I thought. It was not as easy. We had just a lot of difficulty getting pregnant, and so we ended up really trying for 8 years, went through fertility treatments and just saw so many doctors and just waited and trusted, um and yeah, really tested our faith, tested our trust. I mean, it was a season in our lives when all of our friends were essentially having babies and raising families, and so it was really challenging to wait and to trust in God's timing. But 8 years later, um, Isaiah, our miracle baby, was born. We tried to have more biological children after. We had suffered a number of miscarriages before Isaiah,
Mm.
after Isaiah. And so we decided, okay, let's move on and start the adoption process. And so then we adopted Gia from Korea. Um, and that was a 3-year process. And so we brought her home in April of, what is it, 2019. And so this coming April, just here in a few months, she'll have been with us and part of our family for 4 years. But yeah, the experience of being a mom, I mean, I knew even those years when I was, we were trying to get pregnant and we weren't, I knew one day I would be. That's something that God had really given me a sense of, that that was a role that was in my future, that I was going to be a mom. It was just a matter of timing. Being a mom is one of the greatest joys in my life, of my life. I love being a mom. I love my kids so much. They make me smile and laugh every day. I sometimes look at them and just can't believe that they're mine. But yeah, they're awesome. So I'm really thankful for both of them. And I'm not sure what kind of is ahead for us in terms of children. Will we adopt more? Fostering for sure is something that we've talked about recently, still wanting to do. But yeah, we love children.
Nice, nice. Yeah, you have an amazing family. And so, man, I just pray that God will continue to bless you, man, with the desires of your heart and
Mhm.
in your parenting journey. So, and I look forward to seeing what God's gonna do and what doors He's gonna open.
Yeah.
A little birdie told me, a birdie at the office told me that to ask you this question,
Okay.
and she said Sue goes out a lot, at least 6 to 7 times a month. She said, I just kind of gave it away. I said she said, "How do you balance being a wife, a mother, being, I mean, a boss, which you are, running an organization, and then also having a social life? How do you make it happen?"
Yeah. I That's funny. I do go out. Yeah, the 5 or 6 times a month is, to clarify, with like friends. So not with Ken, not with my kids. I actually do plenty of that, but I make it a priority, right? So I think um planning helps, right? Planning ahead. And so often my calendar is filled, like for the next like 4 or 5 weeks. And so if I'm scheduling anything with someone, it's usually like I'm looking like a month out, because things have been planned already. But yeah, I make it a priority. I mean, I think um I make it a priority to spend time with my husband, right? To have one-on-one time because that's really important. I make it a priority to make time for my kids and to have fun and to do things that they enjoy and to, like I said, we spent yesterday part of the day at the Shed Aquarium, just doing, things like that. But I will say a lot of my friends do that. One of the things that I've often talk to my friends where they don't do as much as I do is the 5 or 6 times out with friends. And to me, it's important because those times connecting with my friends, doing things separate from my family enables me actually to be a better mom, better wife. I enjoy life. I mean, I have a bit of FOMO when it comes to life. Like I just don't want to miss out on a lot of things. And so I enjoy time with my friends and I want to invest that, and make that investment in that time. But yeah, it's just a lot of planning and making it a priority. But I I like it. And also, I will say some people know I don't sleep a lot. I sleep about 4 hours a night, and I've been like that for like my entire adult life. And so that also enables me to do a lot of different things too. Yeah.
Wow, wow, 4 hours a night. I'm a 5 hour, six hour, no, usually no more than that. So
Yeah.
we're in the same boat when it comes
Yeah.
to that. So I mean, yeah, planning is important, but yeah, prioritizing, man, if being social is something that's important to you and I'm a social butterfly. My wife, not so much.
Mm,
I can like go out every day. I have the energy and
yeah.
I don't have always the time capacity for it, but because I got 5 kids, so
Yeah.
everybody is wants something different.
Mm-hmm.
My oldest, she's into art and drawing and ramen. It's a new thing she's picked up over the last year. So our daddy daughter dates are she wants to go eat ramen.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
And then my second oldest, TJ, she's into basketball now. So she's had a game yesterday, and her little sister is on the team with her. And Tahili is like a little mixture of both of them. But she just wants quality time. She doesn't matter how she
Mm,
gets it. So she doesn't really
yeah.
demand things
Yeah.
like the older two do. And then my son, he's Steph Curry, fanatic basketball, just wants to play all day. So he's into that. And then I have a 2 year old, soon to be 3 year old Dash.
Mm-hmm.
So just trying to balance out the different you just when I first started having kids, I think like they'll be very similar. All my
Oh
kids
yeah.
have their own personality. They're their own person and they know they like what they like, they want what they want. And so
Right.
yeah, it's just like, man, how do I okay, I gotta get this, I gotta get that. So but it's
Yeah.
fun. But it's fun. It's a lot of joy in
Yeah.
serving them and just parenting and being with them. So I love it. I love it. And so you are the operations director
Mm-hmm.
at Griffin. um Sue is my boss, and we work for a nonprofit, and she has been at this nonprofit for a long time. And I want you to share your story, like early career before you switched to the nonprofit and like what that transition has been like.
Yeah. So I've been with Grip for almost 16 years. So March will be 16 years. And I joined Grip really unexpectedly. So my first career was as a consultant. So I worked for a company called Accenture, really large consulting company. And I really love that job. I focused on process improvement and metrics. And so I did that for about 10 years and I loved it. I traveled every week. So Monday morning, I'm on a 5:30 a.m., 6 a.m. flight out of Chicago to some city. And then I'm back Thursday night or Friday morning. So I did that for 10 years. And then somewhere in
Mm,
there, I had 1 year where I worked and lived in Tokyo, Japan. But I loved the work, I loved the lifestyle, I love the people that I worked with and all that. And then I got married. And though I, enjoyed all of those things, I wanted to see my husband more because being away Monday through Friday did not allow me to see him very much. And like I said, we had tried to start a family when we first got married. And so, yeah, even that being a priority, we decided the consulting life was not something that I could continue. And so I had left Accenture and thought, oh, I'm sure I'll get pregnant right away. And so I don't want to then jump into another job that I'm going to have to leave, because I really thought I was going to be a stay-at-home mom once I had children. So I decided I'm going to get my real estate license and maybe sell some houses for friends and friends of friends, and then we'll, get pregnant, have a baby, and then I can do real estate maybe here and there or not at all. So that's kind of was my plan. And so I got my real estate license and I was doing that. And then we found out at one point that my father was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. And all cancers are horrible, but pancreatic cancer is quite it's a challenging diagnosis, because a lot of people who are diagnosed with it don't live a very long life. It's pretty aggressive. And so I had said to my parents, who still were running that fast food restaurant that they opened up after my dad left the bank, I said, Mom and Dad, why don't you sell the store and just focus on Dad's treatment? And Ken and I said, we will take care of you financially, so that you can do that. That's what we had suggested. And so my parents did end up selling their store. And Ken and I looked at each other and I said, well, if we're going to support them financially, selling houses is fine, but I need some consistent income. And so the quickest way that I thought was to go back to consulting. But still, I wanted to be in the city, not only because we're trying to have a baby, but also now my dad was sick. And so I wanted to be here. So I started looking for consulting positions that didn't require travel. And I applied and interviewed at 3 different places. And there was one out of those 3 that was just my dream job, to put it simply. It was a wonderful salary. It would provide for us and my parents. It was work that seemed exciting that I could do. And it didn't require travel. All the clients were local and didn't require travel. So it was perfect. And so we had prayed, Lord, if you could provide that job, we'd be so thankful. And so sure enough, one day I get a phone call from that company and they offer me the job. And I was just so excited, right? And so I'm playing it cool on the phone. I said, thank you very much for the offer. Can I take a couple days to think about it and talk it over with my husband? Sure. But I hang up the phone and I'm like jumping up and down, and Ken and I are just, elated. Well, 20 minutes after that phone call, I get another phone call from my friend, Bobby, who was on staff at Grip. And Bobby is as close as you can get to a brother who's not a blood brother, right? So we were close. I mean, he's one of my best friends. And so because we were so close, we knew about Grip, right? He had volunteered with Grip and then joined the staff. And so we knew what Grip was about. In fact, he had actually invited us out to Slam, and he said, hey, would you consider being a mentor? And so Ken and I had visited Slam one night and we said, it's not for us, like that, that's not going to fit us. And so, but we said, hey, we're going to support him financially. So we had become donors. And so we had known about Grip. Well, anyway, so Bobby calls 20 minutes after this job offer and he says, hey, just wanted to let you know, Scott, the executive director at the time, is going to call you. And I said, why? And he said, oh, well, we were at a staff meeting and we were talking, he was saying that we have some needs for someone to come and help us with some administrative things. And so I mentioned your name, so he's going to call you. And I said, wait, you're talking about for a job? And he said, yeah. And I said, what's the job? And he said, like filing and entering donations and just like administrative stuff. Okay. So truth be told, so Bobby's like my brother. So I'm completely comfortable being myself, even my very prideful self. So my response to that was, Bobby, that sounds like a secretary's job. I have secretaries work for me. Why would I become one?
I'm already a boss. Like, what you talking about?
Kind of the way I said it. But again, he's, we're close. So I just kind of said what was really honestly on my mind. And he said, I know you're overqualified, but I just thought you could help. So as annoyed as I was, I said, okay, I'll talk to you later. I hung up. As annoyed as annoyed as I was, I said to Ken, something about that phone call, I don't feel like it's a coincidence. I just feel like we're supposed to pray, and so I said, let me just pray, if you can go and pray too, give me a little bit of time. So about 30, 40 minutes later, I'm actually sitting in the kitchen where this conversation happened. So Ken comes out and meets me here in the kitchen. And I looked at him and I said, this doesn't make sense, but I think God's calling me to grip. And he said, I think so too.
Mm.
And, like I said, the real reason for me trying to get this job and this consistent paycheck was to help care for my parents financially. And I thought, Grip's not going to be able to pay. In fact, when Scott called me and he said, can you come in tomorrow to meet with me? And then I said, okay. And then he said, and when you come, if you and Ken could talk about like what salary you need, that would be great. And so, I said to Ken, they can afford to pay me what I need to, help my parents. And so actually in preparation for that conversation with Scott, Ken and I sat there and we budgeted for the first time. I mean, we were two, working people without kids at the time, and we weren't, living extravagantly. But we just didn't need a budget, right? Like we could buy, pay our mortgage and buy groceries and, whatever, like make the car payments without having a budget. So for the first time, I get out an Excel spreadsheet and we start putting numbers and we start budgeting. And then, we add some of the financial numbers for my parents. And so we go through a budgeting process 4 times, because every time we cut, we ask ourselves, do you think that's what Grip can pay? And I'm like, no, I don't think so. I mean, 16 years ago, Grip was, I think, like 5 employees. So really small. They had just become a 501c3 nonprofit like 3 years before. So anyways, so we do this 4 times. And I think, the biggest luxury items we had on there, we used to be season ticket holders to the Bulls and to the Cubs. And so that went out, right? First thing. But we cut, travel stuff. We cut lots of different things, eating out, whatever. So anyways, 4 times. And we get to a number and Ken says, do you think that Grip could afford that? I said, no. And he goes, well, how much do you think we need to cut? And I said, I don't know, like $15,000. I think we need to cut 15,000 from here. And there was no place to
Wow.
cut 15,000 out of, right? So we just said, okay. I said to him, maybe I can sell houses on the side or on the weekends. And then he said, well, maybe he's a pharmacist. So he said, maybe I can pick up some extra shifts, we'll trust God. God will provide the 15,000. So, okay. So I go in the next day, meet with Scott, and he says, can you start tomorrow? And I said, I can't believe like just how quickly things happen. But I said, yep, I can't start tomorrow. And then he
Before
said, well,
that,
how much?
before that meeting, how
Yeah,
stressed were you? Like, were you stressed? Like, I got all these things I want to do, or were you just like, this is what God is calling me. I don't really
yeah,
want to give up all this money, but I'm gonna be obedient. Well,
yeah.
what was your stress levels like?
To be honest, I'm a person who doesn't really get stressed out a lot. And so I wouldn't say stressed was the adjective to describe. I would just say confused. Like I said, I was just really confused
Mm,
about the clarity in which I thought God is calling me to this place, but it doesn't make sense because I needed like work and a consistent paycheck, and this
right,
wasn't going to
right.
do it. And so it was confusion. So anyway, so Scott says, yeah, what kind of salary do you need? And I said, well, to be honest, Scott, you can't afford what I need. And so Ken and I talked about it, and here's the amount that we're going to request. And I said, can you pay that? And he said, yeah. Are you guys okay with it? And I said, no. I mean, to be honest, we need about 15,000 more, but I don't think you could pay that, right? And he said, no. So he said, okay, we're just going to trust the Lord that He'll provide the $15,000. So the next day I go and I'm going about my day, and about 4 hours into the day, my phone rings and it's Ken. And I pick up and he says, I'm so sorry, honey, to bother you on your first day. I'm sure you're busy, but I just had to call you because my work called me and said that I got a raise. And I was like, what? Why would you get a raise? So this is March. Now, Ken always got an annual raise in September of every year. And they were 1% to maybe 2% increases, which was basically like to cover the increase in the cost of living kind
Mm.
of thing. So, pretty small. And so again, so that's usually in September. So I said, why would you get a raise? It's not September. And he said, well, they said they made a mistake when they hired me. And I said, 4 years ago? And he said, yeah. And I was like, and of all days, right, to call and say that they had a mistake. And he goes, honey, that's not the best part. And I said, what? And he goes, guess how much? How much? $15,000.
Look at God.
This was 16 years ago, and I still tear up every time I tell that story because, I mean, like I said, I was confused, and I really did trust that God was going to provide that. But on the very first day, 4 hours in, he says, not only did I give you confidence and clarity that I'm calling you, but whatever you need, I can provide. Like, you don't have to worry about it. It's really, really easy for me, right? And the reason why, I mean, just God's goodness and provision is awesome. But Derry, I will say, I've been at Grip, like I said, 16 years. That's a long time. I've had a lot of good days at Grip. I've had I mean, a lot, the good days totally outweigh the bad, but I've had some really, really tough days at Grip, challenging days, hard days. Knowing who I am, had God not done that first day, anytime I had a bad day, I would have naturally gone to what did I sacrifice? What did I give up? What if, right?
Yeah.
I will tell you, of all the challenging days that I've had, I've never once had those thoughts because I knew without a doubt, because of what God did and how he provided that first day, this is where I'm supposed to be. This is where God's called me. Anything I need, he's going to provide. And so, yeah, I mean, it was such um it just came out of nowhere, this opportunity, but God made it so clear, and then he provided. And so I'm thankful. I mean, I'm so thankful for my time at Grip. Like I said, it was very unexpected, but in hindsight, I think God took the 10 years that I was a consultant and those skills and processes and just the way certain, best practices of doing things, and allowed me to bring those to Grip and help. And then, I mean, gosh, I could go on about just the ways that Grip has changed me and stretched me and challenged me and really changed me as a person. But yeah, that's how I came to Grip.
Man, a powerful, powerful, powerful story. And I mean, the fact that I get to now, I've been at Grip 9 months, almost
Mhm.
9 months, and I've get to witness some of those things that you're talking about, like the Lord showing up. I mean, he showed up today. Um, or like me and the slam director were like, man, we've already reached out to these people. Like, they're not responding. It's been months, and then next thing you know, I see a I see a mentorship application in my email, and I'm like, okay. And then we
Yeah.
have an event today, and then we get all the amazing news that we got today, and we're like, all right, like, let's get it going. Like, God is providing, and it just always reminds me, like, on his timing. Like, we just
Yeah.
gotta
Yeah.
continue to be diligent and do what he's called us to do,
Yeah.
and he's always gonna provide. He called us to do this work, right?
Right.
And for I never doubted that I was called to Grip. I was always like, how am I going to do work? I didn't have a lot of confidence in myself because this was out of my element. Like, I came from
Yeah.
trucking. I was like by myself, cool. I didn't need to interact with nobody. I could work as much as I want, or I could not work at all.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, man, this is new. This is brand new. But I felt such a push, such a, like, the God is calling me here. And then slam director came to a Bible study, and I mean, the rest was history.
Hmm.
And so I'm extremely excited, and I thank God that he's brought me here. I'm being stretched, to do things out of my element, but like, it's a good stretch. And it's like when you exercise, you ain't exercised in a while, and you got that real good stretch in. It's
Yeah.
like that. And then after I come down, I'm like, "Ah, I could do this now." And I'm just being, all of my gifts and abilities are being, I'm having to use them all. I'm having to work
Yeah.
all these muscles that I wouldn't have worked, or I wouldn't have used if I was still trucking. And
Right.
so the fact that I get to exercise, like speaking and just talking to these kids and processing with them,
Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah.
and being able to share the gospel. Like, it's an amazing place to work. It's an
Yeah.
amazing work to do. And I wouldn't change it. I see myself just here for a very long time. Me and Will was joking about that the other day. Like, man, we might be doing this forever. Uh, so, but yeah, um, if you have any, what are some of your like best moments at Grip or favorite
Yeah.
moments?
Yeah, I mean, so many just, God has like I've witnessed miracles at Grip, right? Like times we needed certain amounts of money and he would provide. I mean, just I shared my personal story, but as an organization too, right? I mean, we're in the business of investing in young lives, and when the number of times I've seen and heard about young, men and women come to know Christ for the first time, have thriving, right, relationships with Jesus, hearing stories about students who are now then discipling other students. I mean, just like awesome stories like that. Um, but I will say, I think the first thing, or kind of the answer that popped into my head, was just the people. I mean, we can't do the work that we do without volunteers, right? So we just what you just talked about, like recruiting and having volunteers, going to churches and asking, sharing the vision of what Grip is about, and then having people from churches all over the Chicago area come and volunteer. And we ask a lot of our volunteers, right? We ask for a lot of their time, a lot of their just energy and effort. And we have really, I mean, we've actually, when I speak to a lot of leaders from other nonprofits, they're like, how do you get so many volunteers and how do you get them to do all that you have them do? We just have really good people. And so a lot of my memories are just with like doing this work, doing ministry with people, with our volunteers, with our staff. I've had the privilege of working with a lot of people on staff, right? When I joined, like I said, there were like 5 people. I think I was employee number 6. Right now we have 18 of us. And I love teamwork. I love the body. Um, all of us having different parts, right? Different roles, different strengths, and we come together and do this work together. I just, yeah, those are, when I think of memories, I don't maybe have like exactly a specific one, but it's all around just the people that I get to do this with. And so I'm extremely grateful for that.
Nice. And we all of us, we love working with you. You make our jobs a lot easier, a lot better, just the encouragement and the conversations that we get to have. Some places you can't like challenge your boss, like respectfully, right? Like you can't like
Mhm.
give any type of like feedback. It's like just do what I say do and that's it.
Yeah.
But yeah, you make it easy on us and we really appreciate it. What was like the biggest transition that you had to make? It could be mentally, like spiritually, from corporate to like nonprofit and then like a Christian nonprofit.
Um, gosh, I think so when I was at Accenture, I think it's very different now. I have met people who work at Accenture or just in consulting, and I think it's changed quite a bit since I was there. But when I was at Accenture, we were all kind of like cut from the same mold, or like cookie cutter. Like I feel like personality wise, ambition wise, we were kind of similar. Now I see a diverse, much more diversity. But anyways, so then when I came to Grip, I started interacting with people that were not like me and very different. And it really challenged me to not only accept that, but value that, right? Value that people have different opinions, value that people see the world in different ways, and that there isn't just one right way of doing things, seeing things. Now, don't get me wrong, that wasn't easy, because it really challenged who I was. But I think I've grown to have, yeah, an appreciation and really just valuing different perspectives, different people, different types of people. Um, and yeah, I mean, in fact, I made somebody cry my first day at Grip because I had challenged an idea. I didn't even challenge. She had actually. we were talking about an event, and she said, "Oh, how about this date?" And then I said something like, "Oh, like it might be better to push it, back like 1 week later or something like that for a specific reason." And we went after the meeting like in separate ways, and I felt a tap on my shoulder, and I turned around, and with tears in her eyes she was like, "You really hurt my feelings." Then I literally turned around because I thought, there's no way she's talking to me because I didn't do anything. And I said, "Me?" And she said, "Yeah, when I threw out the idea and then you rejected it in front of everybody." And I just remember thinking, oh my gosh, like what have I gotten myself into? But that was the beginning of really understanding, like hearing people, listening to them, understanding where they're coming from.
Mm.
And so I'm so thankful for that, because like I said, I think it's grown me to become a more empathetic person, a sympathetic person, a better team member, a better leader. And so yeah.
Yeah, I've experienced that. I thought, and I won't say the name here. I'll share with you offline. I thought that I would bump heads with a certain coworker, and I was like, yeah, this ain't gonna work. Like we gonna just clash.
Yeah.
And then but it's been very, very like peaceful, joyful, like having back and forth with this individual, being able to critique and even like um talk about like things that they need to improve on and even things that I need to improve on. Um and we've been able to have those real tough conversations with each other, and it's been a blessing. And even for
Mm-hmm.
me, like being in a corporate setting, I have sometimes my approach or how I can come off sometimes is kind of I don't know the word for it, but it could be like insensitive sometimes. Like just a few days ago, like I had to apologize to somebody. I'll share that with you offline as well. Um, and I was like, it wasn't my intention, but when I got home, I felt conviction, and I was
Mm-hmm.
like, I ain't gonna call this person because I could have called. I was like, I'd rather do it face to face and just let them know they were going through some stuff, and I kind of came in and I was like, "Oh, okay, they were having a rough
Mm-hmm.
time, or that thing that I said was like a trigger for them, and so I had to go back and I had to apologize. And there's a accountability and love, and
Yeah.
like we want the best for each other, and we
Yeah.
also we're brothers and sisters in Christ.
Yeah.
And so we're a spiritual family coming together, working in this organization, and we all kind of just like become family.
Yeah.
And you don't want to hurt your brother or sister, you know what I'm saying? And so for me, that's been an amazing thing because, like I said, I come from trucking where we don't interact with people. I talk to you through my phone or through the
Mm-hmm.
tablet. I don't even need to see you face to face. The only time
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
interacting with people is when I'm giving them paperwork, telling them what I'm dropping off.
You're right.
Um, and so it's definitely been it's been a blessing, and it's been helping
Yeah.
me in my role in ministry. So it's been amazing. It's been amazing. But you're definitely intimidating.
Really?
You could be intimidating. Yes.
That's so funny. Wow, I haven't heard that in a while. I used to hear that a lot when I was a consultant, and then it was funny. People would say, "You're intimidating." I would say, "Oh, thank you."
Well, I think
I
just
don't know,
because
but
in
I'm
America
surprised to
they
hear.
have like I guess we're kind of programmed that like women shouldn't have like strong voices or like know
Yeah,
what they want and be sure of themselves.
yeah.
And so that part of you could be like intimidating.
Mm.
I don't think you as like I would approach you like in the street, like you're not like intimidating in that way. But when it's like, when you give your feedback and you feel strongly about something and passionate about something, it can come off as like, well, I should just keep my mouth shut right now.
Oh, yeah,
Um
no, that's true. That's true. Yeah, if I give my opinion, that's it. Yes, no, nobody else talk. Yeah. Uh,
um so
no,
but
that's
yeah.
funny. Actually, a lot of our SLAM volunteers this year, or some of them, I guess, have had said that, like, oh wow, I thought Sue was always like so serious, but this year actually I've made a intentional effort to kind of be in front of people more, be in front of our volunteers more, talk to them more. And hey, I'm a really like non-intimidating, really fun, easy person, right?
MC Sue, y'all. MC
Yeah,
Sue.
yeah.
She's
Hey,
MCing a lot of the events now. So it's all
hey, like
coming
I
out.
go out a lot. Hey, to the thousands of people watching right now, if you want to have some fun, come. I'm a fun person.
Yeah. Yeah, I heard at
Easy to talk to.
thousands. So if there isn't 1,000 people watching this, make sure you share it
Seriously,
with some people, pass it around.
for sure.
Um, before I let you get out of here, I want you to share your heart. Um, whatever you're thinking about, whatever you want to share to people to encourage them, to inspire. You know, the point of this channel, the point of me doing these interviews is because I want to have your story, person
Yeah,
giving it, to motivate and inspire somebody. Um and whatever they're dealing with, they're struggling with, to know that, man, Jesus loves them, and
yeah.
and that they have people that are praying for them, people that are rooting for them, and a God that loves them, and he died for them to come out of their situation. And so whatever's on your heart, the last few minutes here are yours to just share whatever it is that you want to share.
Thanks, Derry. I mean, first of all, thanks again for just the invitation. I mean, this has been awesome, and I think just uh, what I want to share. I mean, and hopefully this has come through in some of the stories that I shared about my life. But my life has been a testimony about really trusting God and trusting God's plans. Like I said, I'm a planner, right? Like my social life, I plan my family, what how many kids I wanted, I plan. Basically, I've been a planner all my life, and so much of my plans have not gone the way that I thought they would have. But in looking back, I realize um, God loves us and has an amazing, awesome plan for our lives. And I think back to Jeremiah 29:11 that says, "For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future." And I really hope anyone listening right now believes that and knows that um, God has an amazing plan for your life. And so hold on to that promise, hold on to that truth. And then just a couple of other verses I wanted to share, and they're actually connected to my kids. So when Isaiah was born, and we named him Isaiah, we wanted to give him a life verse which would speak some vision and purpose into his life. And so we took his life verse from the book of Isaiah, and it comes from chapter 6, verse 8. And it says, "And I heard the voice of the Lord saying, Whom shall I send, and who will go for us? Then I said, Here I am, send me." And the reason why we chose that verse for our Isaiah is because we wanted him to be the type of person that would look to see where God is working and to say, God, I want to be part of that. I want to be part of where you're working. Use me, choose me. And so that's what we had chosen for our son. And then when so actually Gia's name is an acronym. So her name is spelled GIA, and her name means or stands for God is able. And
Mm.
her life verse comes from Ephesians 3:20 that says, "Now to him who is able to do far more abundantly than all that we ask or think, according to the power at work within us." And so for our Gia, we named her Gia Hope. And so, that her name would tell her that God is able to do anything that we could even ever think or imagine. He can do more abundantly than that. So God is able, therefore have hope. Her middle name. So again, I would say to anyone who's listening, look just like in the Isaiah verse, look for places where God's working, join him. Just as Derry and I have at Grip, join him. It's awesome to be a part of what God's doing. But then also the reminder in Ephesians that God can do so much more than we could ever think or imagine. And so trust him and have hope in him. So yeah, thank you for listening to my stories and sharing about some of the things that I've gone through in my life. But God is good. I thank him for every different plan that he had for me than I had. I thank him so much for how he's just kind of really shaped my life, and I look forward to what's ahead in the future. So thank you for just giving me the chance, Derry, to share those stories. It's been awesome.
Nah, your story is so dope, as I say. Like, your story's dope. And now I want to go like rename my kids because you just dropped that on us. So I'm like, what am I doing with naming my kids? So no, that's cool, man. That's cool. I love that. I love that. And so thank you for taking the time and being willing to share your story on this platform. We'll have to do it again sometimes, maybe a part two. Maybe we'll get into some much more, maybe some sports stuff, a little bit lighter things. I don't know. Sue is a big sports. She's a Cubs
Oh
fan.
yeah.
She loves the Cubs. The Bulls, like she said, she was a season ticket holder, and then the Bears.
Yeah.
If she was the GM, she probably would do some things different than what they're planning on doing. But
I'm excited for the future of the Bears. Yes.
yeah. So I'll have you on again, and we'll dive into those things. But man, thank you, and have a good night. Tell Ken I said what's up, and kiss the kiddos, and I'll see you at the office.
All right. Thanks so much, Derry.
All right, you have a good one. Peace.
Bye bye.